Hello, friends, and welcome to our continuing work with a treatise on cosmic fire. Uh, in depth, as much in depth as we can provide. Of course, we know it is a book for initiates, and I think DK says it evades understanding by all except those who have the initiate consciousness. And this would mean that initiates of the third degree would have to begin penetrating this book, but I think we can get something out of it. Um, I think we're on group program number 52, page 82, and I did a few extra programs by myself, which is the reason that we have the number 56 there as well. So let's, what I'll do is hopefully be able to, I will use this from the book, and occasionally I will go back to the documents I've made. Now, you probably know that the documents made so far consist of a detailed written commentary up till about 100 pages before the end of the book. And then, because time was short, I simply took on video commentary. And hopefully, that would suffice. Different things come out of the video commentary. There we are again. Different things come out of the video commentary than do when you are writing meticulously, which I think I have done as far as the power within me will allow. Now, I'm really hoping that Michael Crow shows up, because otherwise, let's see, admit all. You all should be, I don't know, maybe you haven't heard what I've been saying, because as you see, I'm not as adept at this technically, not at all, as Michael is, so there must be a reason why he's not here. But it's really good to see you all, and I've welcomed a few of you when you were in the meeting room, and I just want to give a general welcome to Anne, Parker, and Annette from New Zealand, and Carl from Pittsburgh, and Catherine from Australia, and Francois from Canada, I think Toronto, but maybe Montreal, I think Toronto, and Frederick from Japan, Heike from Germany, and Joe, I should know where you live, but welcome, Joe Garceau, and Joan, the same. Welcome to you. Karen from Portland, and Lori from Phoenix, and Mayra Santos, I think, maybe from one of the South American countries, perhaps. Welcome, Mayra. And Tia from the Washington, D.C. area. Uh, and Vivian, welcome. And Zenaidi, who I think is in Switzerland now, and Anil, Yag Yagtiani. I'm not sure where you hail from, Anil, but welcome to you, and Greg, to you as well. So I basically give, in some of these programs, a little welcome, and I don't do it again, but, glad that you can join us. Well, every time I look at Cosmic Fire, I feel a little bit, a little daunted, It's such a profound book, and I know, of course, that we can't get through the whole thing, at least while I'm in this incarnation, maybe somehow in the future. I think it will take a long time, maybe until the year of the next great decision, which I think is 2050, but I won't worry about that. We'll just go along as best we can, and I am also trying to provide for you the material on the book Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle. I've done a certain amount of programs there. I'm sometimes curtailed in my efforts to do more because there's just so much going on. And Tuya and I have a very extensive broadcast schedule. But when I have the stamina, I work on it, and I think we've got at least 20 programs for that very first of the C groups, telepathy, which had so many of the more advanced, but not exclusively so, but so many of the more advanced members in it, like Alice Bailey, of course, and Foster Bailey, and Regina Keller, who was the major editor on behalf of Alice Bailey of so many of the books. I just find it an amazing book, and one that we can with profit give attention to. As you may see, compared to a few days ago, when I couldn't speak at all, basically, my voice is coming back. So I just have learned a lesson about that one, and how strong medicines can be if you're not judicious in how you use them. And more than once in my life I've been injudicious. Sorry for that. But that does occur, and we'll just have to go with the flow on those little interruptions. Anyway, I just want to say nice to see you all here, and yeah, Francois, Toronto, that's it, of course. Okay. Now, We are involved with these 8 statements, and approximately page 81, 82 in a treatise on cosmic fire. It is, the Tibetan says, a little segue here, it is the etheric bodies of all we are dealing. It is with the etheric bodies of all we are dealing, and with their vivification, and by prana, whether cosmic prana, well, you know, at the very height of our cosmic etheric plane, we have 4 cosmic ethers, or whether it's solar, planetary, or human prana. Okay, so the Tibetan is saying we're dealing with their vivification by prana, whether cosmic, solar, planetary, or human. The thing about this book is there are so many comparisons between the different levels, different entities, and what animates them. Okay, so vivification, tough word for me to pronounce, by prana. We're dealing with the organs of reception and with the basis of emanation. And here, therefore, the Tibetan goes on, we shall arrive at certain dicta. It's not a word commonly used, is it? But certain dicta anent the etheric body, which for purposes of clarity might well be enumerated. So we've gone over this, of course. It's the mold of the physical body. It's the archetype upon which the dense physical form is built. And may I add, whatever that dense physical form may be. And DK goes on to say, whether it is the form of a solar system, of a human body, or of a human body in any one incarnation. And third, the etheric body is a web of, or network of fine interlacing channels. Well, may I interpolate energy channels, okay? Fine interlacing channels formed of matter of the 4 ethers, whichever those ethers may be, okay? Formed of matter of the 4 ethers and built into a specific form. I'll add here that what comes first is the etheric archetypal movement or patterning, and then the form, the denser form, denser than the etheric form, arises. It forms, says the Tibetan, a focal point for certain radiatory emanations which vivify, stimulate, and produce the rotary action of matter. Now look, Greg, you're new here, so just want to tell you, make a note of your question. And then when we get to the point where we're going to discuss the questions, then you can either speak about it or you can write what you have in mind. But at first, I'm not going to pause. I'm going to go on. Okay, so that's how we do it. All right. Now, we have 8 points that we have to deal with, and let's see if we can make sense out of these various points. And as well, let's see if I'm in the right place. I think I'm in a good enough place. Anyway, now remember, in this particular document, which is the document of meticulous writing, which I've been producing over many years, there's a lot said in blue. Okay, and but I'm going to improvise a bit more than try to repeat what is said here. This you can find on Makara, and you can study it if you have the time and the will to do so. Okay? Now, let me go on. So, the fourth point that we did not get to last time, there are 8 points. These pranic emanations, when focalized and received, react upon the dense matter which is built upon the etheric scaffolding and framework. Now, it's probably no secret to you. Just want to make sure that everything is recording properly here. Okay. It's probably no secret to you that the new type of medicine that is coming into expression is energy medicine. And we will be, since the etheric body will be discovered by fairly average man, because there will be a heightening in the vibrations of the ethers, and because there will be changes in the eye of the perceiver of the future, well, then that perceiver will perceive that the dense matter is built upon an etheric scaffolding and framework, or shall we call it maybe patterning. And when we look for disease or conditions which are not quite right, or maybe some conditions which are very right, we will look to the condition of the etheric body, whether on the individual level, the group level, the community or national level, and even finally the international level that involves all of humanity, in contrast with humanity's angel of the presence. So we'll be looking for what makes the more solid forms act as they do. And we just won't look only on the outer level. We will look on a level that conveys to us the condition of the etheric patterning. Now, you've probably heard the word miasma or miasma. Generally means cloud of some kind or a faulty condition, a disease, But those miasmas are found first in what functions as the etheric body in relation to its densification. There are a number of different levels of densification. And of course, the physical body, in the normal sense, is, at least for practical purposes, the lowest level. Maybe there's some kind of level called the eighth sphere. It has kind of a ignominious reputation in some of the occult books, and it is possible that even beneath, shall we say, the physical level, there are other levels of density. But we'll work all that out and discover that as we attend carefully to Master DK's instruction, which is extraordinary in its lucidity. Okay, the fifth point here. The etheric web, this etheric web, during incarnation, and this is an important issue, forms a barrier between the physical and the astral plane. And I'd like to interpolate the idea that the thought anyway, that the lower levels of the astral plane are quite toxic generally, and they are the source of the obsession of many individuals. And DK tells us, to give an idea of how toxic they can be, is that the so-called hell of the average Christian or believer is found on the seventh or lowest level of the astral plane. And that people like ourselves, and generally human beings, you don't have to be a student, as we are, of occultism and esotericism, they are not to have any of the seventh subplane or sixth subplane astral matter entering into their consciousness. It's quite enough to have the subplanes number 1 through 5, and otherwise we run the risk of, shall we say, being taken over by obsessing, possessing forces which bring great negativity to the human condition. So that's my little interpolation there. You know what I do? I read what DK has said, and then I occasionally interpolate remarks which are meant, if possible, to shed a little more light, or at least to offer some connections which we might not have thought about. Okay, so again, DK is saying, the etheric web during incarnation forms a barrier between the physical and the astral plane, which can only be transcended when consciousness is sufficiently developed to permit escape. Now, there are a lot of people, another interpolation, who try to, by artificial means and the use of drugs and excessive meditation practices, they attempt to escape from the etheric boundary, to burn through it, in fact, and they damage themselves. I think I've told you the story about when I had gone by myself to the University of Minnesota to see an opera. I was in the opera business, and I just happened to arrive at a time when the students had rebelliously, whatever, taken over the student union. Basically, I had no place to sleep. So I spent the night there, and I encountered many kinds of people, including one person who I figure was pretty much burnt out and burnt through because of drugs, and he was simply like a vacant house into which anything could come. It's not that he was an unpleasant person at all, but you could see that the etheric webs no longer protected him because he had not understood what they were and did not have respect for what drugs of various kinds can do to the consciousness, and not just the consciousness, the apparatus which the consciousness uses. So there is a legitimate means of refining and going beyond the etheric webs, but that is requiring a lot of attention to purification, and perhaps there are quite a few people who don't have the patience to engage in those purificatory processes. Okay, so DK goes on and says, you can only transcend the protective barrier of ether when your consciousness is sufficiently developed to permit escape, and of course the various initiates that can at will go out onto the higher planes, they have done that. They can escape legitimately, and not in a manner which is against reason and really against the law of proper occult esoteric development. Now DK goes on and says, this can be seen in both the microcosm and macrocosm. Now, what is the macrocosm in this case? It's oftentimes considered the planetary logos, but we could certainly extend the idea. The microcosm is generally the individual disciple. And so always the law of analogy will apply, and greater and greater relations between protective ethers and the possibility of escaping through them legitimately to higher points of tension will exist Now, let, let me give an example. The Christ is a member of the council chamber of Sanat Kumara on the Logoic plane. Now, the Christ and the Buddha and, well, such great beings, but let's focus on them particularly, are preparing to escape onto the cosmic astral plane, after which they may well, go to the cosmic mental, where another form of legitimate escape will be practiced. We cannot for a moment think that the Christ, through lack of patience, he being the head of the hierarchy, uh, will, through impatience, illegitimately attempt to escape. As a matter of fact, even now the figure 8 is operative for him and for the Buddha as they are learning to enter the cosmic astral plane and then return to the highest level, highest etheric level of the cosmic physical plane. But then these great beings know exactly what they're doing. Unfortunately, ignorant humanity, filled with spiritual ambition. And you can question yourself, I can question myself, whether there is harbored in me spiritual ambition. Because when you have ambition, you are thinking egotistically in the lower sense, and you want to drive through and beyond for the sake of your own lower ego, which is not a legitimate motive. So, let's again look at what the Tibetan has actually said. The etheric web, during incarnation, forms a barrier between the physical and astral plane, which can only be transcended, and I'll add lawfully, okay, only be transcended when consciousness is sufficiently developed to permit of escape. And then, according to the monadic ray and the different sequences involved for different monadic rays, it is possible to transcend the otherwise protective barrier. And DK goes on and says, this can be seen in both the microcosm and the macrocosm, okay, that being largely the planet itself, the macrocosm, but there are many ways to look at those greater entities in whom we live and move and have our being as macrocosms. In a way, the whole solar system with the solar logos is for us a macrocosm in which we live and move and have our being. So, going on with the Tibetan, when a man has, through meditation and concentration, one ruled by Virgo, that's meditation, concentration ruled by Leo, we're getting the picture of the Sphinx when we think of those two signs together. But okay, when a man has, through meditation and concentration, expanded his consciousness to a certain point, he is enabled to include the subtler planes. And we don't necessarily know how this is done in terms of the physics of the higher planes, but DK says, and to escape beyond the limits of the dividing web. Now, every true initiate can do that. Escape beyond the limit of the dividing web. And of course, the members of the 246 ashrams, ever since approximately the year 1925, have moved the locus of their focus, to the spiritual triad. They have definitely escaped beyond these etheric limitations. Now, maybe these webs are still useful. I'm not saying that you are discarding them or that they disappear, because remember, we are not to be contaminated by the subplane energy or force of the lowest aspects of the astral plane. So maybe they have to stay intact. But nevertheless, it's possible to, through antikarana building, through building the Rainbow Bridge, it is possible to locate one's consciousness on or within higher and higher states of tension. I was quite amazed the other day. I was reading in telepathy that, the council chamber of Shambhala is a tremendous source of stimulation, but there are beings who feed into that council chamber and who are still more powerful than anything found in the council chamber. So in the telepathy book, in some of the recent programs that BL has put on Makara, and Joe and Harold have put on our YouTube channel, you can find which beings they are, that are so high that they're actually considering Shambhala to be the recipient of their energy streams. Let's just say, friends, that occultism, and we're just beginners. Okay, let's get that straight. That occultism is not easy. And when you begin to think about what Master DK knows about about astrology and the rays and the creative hierarchies, and he says, look, and what lies beyond on the cosmic astral plane? He says, I don't know. I haven't been there. And yet, here he is, so far as we understand, an initiate of the fifth degree, maybe by now the sixth. It's hard to know. And he has the humility of knowing what he can actually invoke, evoke, what he can actually do, what he can actually spread among his students for their upliftment and edification, and he does not pretend to be more than he is. He does not claim some kind of status which is not his own. Is he now an ascended master, just as the Christ ascended at the sixth degree? Is Master Decay somehow becoming capable of the ascension or more? Well, we don't know. And it's not terribly important that we do know, because what is important is to grasp what he's trying to convey in such highly elucidating and meticulous and well-organized ways. Okay, now there's a bit more here. And this looks like a division on page 82. And I'm not quite sure. I know you're still looking at the other. Well, maybe I can. Would I be then showing what has to be shown if I look at this kind of chart that I made? And this, I think, we're somewhat familiar with, that the first ether of our cosmic etheric physical plane is called the atomic plane. It's called the plane of Adi. I guess it means number one. It's also called, descriptively, the sea of fire. It has those, as I was discussing, was it yesterday? At the new moon gathering, it has these streams of force and certain centers which are vivified, and the whole thing is consummate in its beauty. And then the second ether is named subatomic. Now, you write down on the lowest levels of our normal planes, it's the second level, subatomic. But as well, if we go higher and think of cosmic ethers, it's called Anupadaka. And I think it means, well, we have to look it up. I think it's something like the parent of itself. Maybe someone wants to look that up. It is the monadic plane, and rather than sea of fire, it's called the Akasha, or the second cosmic ether. Um, Obviously, the first ray is connected with the first ether, and the second ray with the second ether, and then begin the Brahmic or third ray series of connections. The third ether is called super etheric, and that's whether we're talking about our ordinary solar planes or whether we're talking about the cosmic etheric planes. So it's also called the spiritual plane, and sometimes it's called the nirvanic plane. It's the highest level of the spiritual triad, and rather than akasha, it's called aether as a whole. Not ether, but aether, even though it is the third cosmic ether, whereon begins the expression of the third aspect of divinity. Now, the fourth ether, if we come down to our own normal level of, what is an etheric plane, what is a physical plane, it's called supergaseous because it's above the level of the gaseous subplane, which is part of the density of the physical body. Once we get to the lowest part of the cosmic etheric and cosmic physical planes. So it's one step above the gaseous. Now, as the gaseous, when we think higher, is the mental plane. So, from the point of view of the cosmic ethers, the Buddhic plane, or intuitional plane, or plane of pure reason, is the super gaseous level because it's above the mental plane. And the elements that characterizes it is not the sea of fire, not akasha, not aether, but air. And in the formulas we get in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, we learn that the air is God. So this is the fourth cosmic ether, where our monads, the monads of that creative hierarchy of which we are a member, that hierarchy that is called the initiates, we gather there to work. We may have our origin on the monadic plane or above, but presently we work through the fourth or the ninth creative hierarchy. And that hierarchy will be found on the Buddhic plane, or the fourth cosmic ether. All right, well, this was my attempt, little bit of an attempt to codify what DK says in other ways. And by the way, Anupadaka does mean without progenitors, maybe self-born, maybe parentless. I don't know how many of us are Sanskrit scholars. I once got it into my head that I would make a concerted effort to study Sanskrit, which I did, but realizing that to achieve even a minimum of benefit, it would take 10 years and having all kinds of other things that were necessary to do in terms of the education in the University of the Seven Rays and Seven Ray Institute and later the Moria Federation. I just had to make a decision that I could not afford the time. It would be nice to be able to enter into those studies, and maybe it will be possible when the initiate consciousness, which allows an individual to do a great deal in a short amount of time, belongs stably to me and to others. Okay, so here's a bit of we're going to go down and discover on the dense physical the bodily nature of gaseous, liquid, and earthy, the densest of all. And the gaseous level is called sub-etheric, and it's mental. The astral level, the emotional plane, and the earthy, the dense physical plane. And when it comes to the larger planes, the mind subplane, if I can call it that, is the cosmic gaseous. The astral subplane, cosmically considered, is the cosmic liquid plane, and Earth is the cosmic dense plane. Now, we could learn a lot, I think, by, studying with the physicists fluid dynamics and gaseous dynamics. Right now, we're pretty much confined to the lowest levels of etheric physical. Okay, well, I hope that has been a little bit helpful. So what I just went through was what's in front of us right now. Only I kind of boxed it in and tried to make it a bit more, square, if you can look at that. So basically all the information was there that is being handled here. The atomic plane, the subatomic, the superetheric, and the supergaseous. These are subplanes of our normal etheric level, and then we transfer that to a cosmic context, and we call them, by all of these names, which we just went over. Adi and Anupadaka and Atmic and Buddhic. And then we would be studying the areas in which humanity generally flourishes, unless being a profound student of occultism and meditating and thinking their way forward into a more transcendental type of positioning. So we've gone over all of this just now. Now we are on page 83. When the Logos has expanded his consciousness on cosmic levels, he can then transcend the Logoic etheric web and escape beyond the ring pass knot of his objective manifestation. Now, what is that objective manifestation? And I would have to say it is our lower three subplanes particularly. I know it's hard to keep all this. Okay, just always, friends, keep the law of analogy and the somewhat more detailed law, the law of correspondences, in your mind. And you will see that in this book, although much is implied, what is being studied is the atom of matter, the human atom, the planetary atom, and the solar logoic atom. Those are the types of atoms to which DK gives attention while hinting at the cosmic atom and the supercosmic atom, and eventually, after going through I don't know how many different levels, the galactic atom, but that's not the end either. There's a whole family of galaxies, which I suppose are sevenfold in their nature, and then something to combine such sevenfold galaxies. Of course, you know, that's simply speculation on our part. Some people they do get carried away, and they want to range throughout the universe. They can't, of course, because even our planetary atom, even our solar logoic atom, can be considered like crystals compared to some of these great lives. So we have to know our limitations and also our possibilities. So DK goes on, page 83. When the Logos has expanded his consciousness on cosmic levels, he can then transcend the Logoic etheric web. Well, that logoic etheric web can be considered as dividing the cosmic etheric physical plane from the cosmic astral plane. That's one way, and we can go even further to the supercosmic Buddhic plane, and even further, and so forth. I remember once Tuya made diagrams of all these planes. It's quite a sight. She had to stand on a chair, holding her hands high, to get the unfoldment of even some of the different levels. We are, in a way, dealing with what we might call level theory, and we want it to be an actual experience for us. Now, DK goes on and says, in thinking out this analogy, we must hold closely in mind the fact that the 7 major planes of our solar system, that's in the usual sense, etheric physical, astral, mental higher and lower, Buddhic, atmic, monadic, and logoic. Those would be the ordinary planes of our solar system. The 7 major planes of our solar system, says Master Decay, are the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical, or the lowest cosmic plane. I see that DK, when he talks about the cosmic etheric physical, he just calls it the cosmic physical and leaves the word etheric out of it. You kind of wonder why we have taken so long to come to an appreciation of these different levels and their combinations, their macrocosmic, microcosmic relationships. Maybe because the human mind has its normal fallibilities, and until such teachers as H.P. Blavatsky and the Tibetan Alice Bailey showed up and began to teach, we didn't really have the way of conceiving these things. These charts that he gives us, these maps, are highly esoteric, and we need them to figure out some of the arcana of what is actually going on. Okay, DK goes on. We might note here the accurate working out of the correspondence in matter, and the correspondence, the radiatory correspondence, is equally accurate. So there's always going to be something upholding a position in an analogy, and even more so in the detailed law of correspondence when we consider the human atom, the planetary atom, the solar systemic atom, and but I've left one out. There are four. There are four. Ah, yes. I left out the atom of matter. So, the atom of matter, the human atom, the planetary atom, the solar logoic atom. Now, at various points, and I've dealt with this in my meticulous commentary, he gets into a very convincing comparison between these different types of atoms. And while he doesn't describe higher atoms in a manner as detailed, we know that in our local cosmic logos, I sometimes think of it as the first of the ones about whom naught may be said. Our sun plays the role of a great heart center, and it doesn't end there by any means. Okay. So, we might note here the accurate working out of the correspondence in matter, and the radiatory correspondence is equally accurate. Now, when we're dealing with latent fire or maybe radiatory fire, the radiatory fire belongs to the etheric level, and the latent fire, the denser fire, belongs to the outer plane, or whatever is to be considered outer in relation to the etheric patterning which works through the denser area, field, subject to the etheric impression. Okay, there are a few more things here, and I know we're getting to the point because I have to, well, probably it would be wise to stop because I do want you to be able to offer your questions and your comments, etc. If you've been marking down what for you are arresting hints. But let's take a look at number 6 and see what it's all about. In all the three bodies, human, planetary, systemic or logoic, which is basically the same thing, will be found a great organ with the organism which acts as the receiver of prana. Now, a dense physical body as the receiver of prana is quite easy to understand. But when we get into some of the higher receivers, it's not so easy to understand. The organ has its etheric manifestation and dense physical correspondence. For instance, if I were to got to remember this. If I were to ask you, what is it that corresponds to the dense physical body of the, let's say, solar logos? Would you tell me that it's the lower three solar planes, normal, etheric, physical, astral, mental? Would you tell me that? Because that is the fact. The cosmic ethers, the higher four, work their will out in the mental plane, our normal mental plane, our normal astral plane, our normal etheric physical plane. So that is density. Now, if we go still higher into the level of the cosmic planes, we will find that the entire cosmic etheric physical plane, or usually cosmic physical plane, is the level of density compared with some higher etheric patterning going on above it. And so it goes, and so it goes. Now, well, I'm tempted. But since Tui and I have at 9 o'clock our time and 7 o'clock GMT, the continuing vigil for the planetary UN climate conference, I better not do what is my habit and take things too far. So we are up to page 83. We've really only looked at a page or so, but then this is a list of the so-called important dicta, and we want to make sure that we do not miss what they really represent. So if I were to kind of change a little bit and move this down, this is 83, and we have ended then program 57 and group program number 53, and our date today is the 5th of November, and we began at 5 p.m. and I think is that correct? Well, usually at this point, one of the members of the communication team intervenes and says, no, it's not correct. So maybe this is that. But anyway, I'll go down, I'll transfer this, I'll transfer this to this point. And let's see. So this will be the end of 57 and group program 53, 5th of November. It looks like I did something wrong up there. And our work has been on page 82 to 83. Since these dicta have to be examined carefully. So the next time we go over this, it will be program A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, in-depth video commentary, number 58, and group program 54, and I'll just be a little bit cautious, and I'll say that it will happen at some point in November, no doubt. And we'll begin with page 83. Well, sometimes it seems like we're just crawling along, but you can understand why that may be necessary. So what I'll do is copy this and put it here. Okay. Okay, friends, now I don't know who I have to help me at this point. Maybe I just haven't looked at the, but you know, I appear to be the host. So probably I have to help myself. And I'll try to do that. There's nobody else on the team. I'll find out later why that is the case. So, now I'm just going to ask in the chat box, I'm going to take a look at what's here. And there is in the chat box me welcoming some people who arrived fairly early. I couldn't welcome everybody in that way. So, and here is a question. And where does it come from? And it says, it is to everyone, and maybe it's from Greg. I'm not sure. But I'll read it. Hi, it says. Okay. I hope I'm doing this correctly. And the question is, Sanskrit, Anupadaka, means, parentless, and thank you for providing that. Well, You know, if we're going to think about parentlessness, there's really only one thing, and you can't call it a thing, really. It's a no thing. Uh, it is the absoluteness itself, than which there is no other. And so, generation from parents or predecessors is not possible. So that is the ultimate parentless entity. And in order to start dealing with that, we have to go beyond the level of any particular finite universe, finite Mahamayavic, I call it that, universe. It's the great Mahamaya. Every universe is, and is basically uh, implying infinitude, but is not itself infinite. Now, if we will come to another program sometime soon called Identify as Being, we go through these kinds of thoughts and definitions. I mean, imagine a time when there is no universe. Now, this has happened periodically, forever, without beginning, without end. That universes are finite and occur in an infinite succession, which is marked out by the breathing, symbolically anyway, of the great breath, which is discussed in the stanzas of Xian and discussed by Madame Blavatsky. Frankly, our concrete minds just start to not be able to take that in. But if we work hard and keep the heart really open and keep the eyes from shifting all over the place from one thing to another, the experience of the infinite series of finitudes. Now think about what I just said. An infinite series of finitudes, an infinite series of Maha-Mayavic expressions will be understood a little, at least a little. All right. Now, and here's a question, and I suppose it's Greg. I did have a question, but that was I responding to that? And it was just an early greeting. Yes, always happy to be greeted. Always happy to be greeted. Look, questions arise. Long ago, almost 50 years ago, I opened an esoteric bookstore in an unlikely place. It was Fargo, North Dakota, of all places, because it's quite a, conservative community, and I was simply there and known as an opera director. However, I called this little bookstore, the Question Shop. And I only learned later that the asteroid called Sphinx was in a prominent position uh, in my um, in my own horoscope, and it was the tendency to ask unanswerable questions. Well, I'm certainly engaged in that and have been increasingly so. Um, these almost 50 years and even more. There are so many mysteries, and DK is imparting some of them in his, or at least hints that we should consider them in some of his very uh, illuminating writings. Illuminating if we really ponder. And it's almost kind of a sin, to run into material like that which Master DK provides and say, okay, well, I'll once over lightly. There is no such thing as once over lightly. One has to get into the profundity of the matter. All right, now, what else? Um, defining, the question I had was defining let's see if I get it, the four um, etherically and physical lower, um, this is such a difficult thing to move this, bodies. And I
So
wanted,
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
I can, now that's good, yeah.
I can just ask it. So so
Yeah,
mom, shut yours down.
that's good. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, just a second. Get mom's computer sound turned off. Okay. So the question, what I was going to ask was, there was an early reference when I studied with Arcane School and also with Church Universal Triumphant, a concept of 4 lower bodies versus 3 lower bodies. And the way what you were describing in this particular commentary was how the 3 lower bodies represent the 3 dense physical aspects of ourselves. And then, so then I took it and related it to a concept of the 4th lower body, which is the highest body that we can perceive mentally. It's at the highest level of the mental plane that we can perceive the whole greater, and that's the 4 lower bodies. But in order for us to understand and even begin to move beyond that level and basically early on into the Buddhic plane, we have to recognize that that highest 4th level body is really the earliest aspects of the beginning of the Buddhic plane and how we can actually understand it and relate to it from our limited perspective here on in our understanding. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And, look, there are different ways to count. That's all I can say.
Okay, now
We
he's
have we have
no.
lower mental, we have astral, we have etheric, we have physical. That's a fourfoldness. If we want to wrap up the etheric and physical together, then we have the personality in
Right.
position number 4.
Yeah. And so the
So,
highest level of the personality would be the top level of the lower subplanes, which would be the first plane of the mental, the highest level of mental that we can perceive. And so when we discount the four lower bodies, we understand that we're either taking the four lower bodies and turning and representing them as a personality that's learning to be integrated with the soul level.
okay, here's the thing. When we actually slip into the consciousness of the soul on its in the causal body and the egoic lotus, we are no longer specifically dealing with the personality. We're
Mhm.
dealing with a an area of our higher expression which has to learn how to work uh, in an infusing manner with the personality. So, I've never understood that the personality itself would be anything more than uh, fourfold. And if you want to split the the etheric physical, well, then the personality integrating point would be the fifth in its nature. But really, the levels are different, and that's what humanity is having such a tough time now, because we don't know how to meditate within the soul, which is not the same, he tells us in Letters on Occult Meditation, as meditating within the personality. Even the personality as a whole is not the same as meditating within the soul. And meditating within the soul, what we normally call the soul, is not the same as meditating within the true soul or spiritual triad, where right now the majority of ashrams are found, especially those along the 246 line. And meditating within the triad is also a lower level than meditating as the Christ can do now um, on the monadic plane and in the logoic plane, so called symbolically sitting at the right hand of the Father in Shambhala. So you're always going to have something that looks high, but compared to the etheric patterning going on behind it, it is bodily in nature. So, what might some of those bodies be? Well, obviously, our own dense physical body is one such thing. And
Mhm.
then I mentioned again that when it comes to the planetary logos, the uh, yeah, okay. When it comes to the planetary logos, the lower 18 subplanes of our normal solar planes are considered bodily compared to um, an etheric patterning that goes on above them. And now, when it comes to the spiritual triad, then even the causal body and the egoic lotus, they're both essentially the same thing, are
Mhm.
considered bodily
Mhm.
when compared to the cosmic ethers, okay? And the
Mhm.
cosmic ethers are considered bodily when the monadic and logoic planes are involved. But that's not the end of it. It,
Mhm.
it goes
Right. Yeah.
on and on and on. So basically, some very high states are actually bodily states when compared to their etheric sponsors. But we look up at them because we have not yet achieved them. Now, I don't know how many of us have really achieved being able to meditate within the soul. He says very few people, which is the reason why their meditation is not what he calls successful. Well, then what
Hmm.
about meditating within the spiritual triad? Well, what about meditating within the monad and the logoic
Yeah,
supramonadic
it's like,
plane?
yeah, it's just way too above for us. I mean, we just really need to focus on being here on the planet Earth, and the lowest inklings of, well, the highest inklings that we might be able to perceive is perhaps meditating in the Buddhic or in the causal body, or the lowest plane of the Buddhic plane, which becomes the causal body, or the monastic permanent atom. Would you say that they're similar to that the monastic permanent atom and the causal body are very close, or am I just going way too far out?
It feeds it. If we build the Antikarana properly, then we have a situation in which the monastic permanent atom on the first subplane of the normal mental plane feeds our normal soul body. And there are diagrams to show how this works, okay? And no, that's not too far because our Antikarana building is supposed to be able to take us uh, into that combination of mental unit with four spirillae and monastic permanent atom with three spirillae, making sevenfold in all. So that's much easier to achieve. Well, it's not easy, okay, but easier to achieve than to meditate actually um, within the Buddhic vehicle, because there are limitations there all the time. And as far as meditating within the Atmic vehicle, okay, look, some first ray ashrams have that focus. But that's where the Beatitudes are written. And they are the pronouncements of the Christ. Now, maybe I can show you, or everybody, if I sometimes I get a little lost here. Um, that's where I rely upon my upon the team that isn't here today. Okay, um, I want to let's see. How can I do that? It's is it this? Is it this one? I think it's AAB diagrams. Okay, and I move that down a bit, and let's see if I can get something from this. AAB diagrams, and then let's see if there's anything further here. Well, I'm not going to have such an easy time here. Egoic Lotus and the centers. Let's see how this works. Egoic Lotus and the centers. I'm going to try to get this going. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. I know you don't see that yet, but you will shortly. And if I can just now get my okay, because this is a compendium made by Keith Bailey, and I think a very good one. Um, Now I'd like to show you this, if I possibly can. And maybe the way of doing that is to, yeah, right here. All right. This is a composite chart. And basically, once the Antikarana, the Rainbow Bridge, is built, it can influence very much the soul vehicle with its telepathy, its group vibration, its spiritual discernment. But when you start to get up to the Buddhic plane, we have some very esoteric things going on. We have comprehension of the four sounds. We have healing, divine vision, intuition, and idealism. Beyond that, we cannot go, and even a master cannot go to the truly occult areas here on this plane. And when it comes to the atmic plane, where the Beatitudes were given, we have on the lowest level, Beatitude. I wonder how many people understand that. Active service, realization, perfection, and finally, all knowledge. Well, that's way beyond what we can do. Now, look, I have to be careful because I'm going to run out of time. Because Tuya and I have, we have the vigil for the United Nations. It's on Zoom for the United Nations climate change. But let's just say that we have our limitations, and anything that involves the monad is beyond this chart, or anything that involves the Egoic plane. The most important thing is not to exaggerate our capabilities, because we will fall into lower egotism, which basically emphasizes the personality above the angel of the presence. And that is a deadly thing to happen, and people will lose a lot of time because of it. So I trust you can all see this. Well, I think that's all I can really do right now, friends. It's time for Tuya and me to look at the, to look at the conference in Glasgow. And okay, it looks like Michael Crow is now here with us, and I hope everything's okay with him. But we're finished with this now. So
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate. I think you clarified it 100-fold with what you just specified in your talk. So that was very helpful.
I'm just happy to make a few suggestions. Michael Kroll, hi. We're finishing up now the Cosmic Fire, and I hope everything's okay with you. Somehow we managed, and I don't know how, but never as good as when you're here. And now we go right on to the next program. So, so I just want to thank everybody for showing up and for thinking together and for realizing the subtlety of this whole issue, that things that look very high are really bodily when compared to something still higher, and that is the etheric patterning that is behind them. I wish I had more time to discuss a lot of things with you right now, but at least this is a start. So many blessings to everybody, and Tuya and I send you our very best and hope for assimilation, and the whole communication team does that as well. So Michael is now the host here, and he can turn us off when the time comes. What I'm going to do now is turn off the, what am I going to do? Yeah, I'm going to turn off the recording, if I can. Yes, I'll stop the recording, I'll leave, I'll go to the, where Tuya will already be, I trust, in the climate change Zoom cast, which you should have in the schedule that has been sent to you. For 13 days, we're working on that pretty much every day, and it's important to support it esoterically. Thank you for your attention, and we'll just continue to absorb what the Great Master DK has given us, and we'll do our best absorbing it. It won't be so easy, but we'll do our best. Okay, thank you, and welcome to those of you who are new here, and glad to see you. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now. And go on to the next program.